Our program is 8 veterans of the recent Gulf Desert Storm conflict. These are Camp Pendleton Marines that have served in the conflict right on the front line, an infantry battalion. Gentlemen, I'll introduce you as I go, and we'll talk a little bit about your experiences. And at about 15 minutes into the program, we'll let our audience call in and ask questions to each of these gentlemen about what their experiences were. First, I'd like to start off with, and we've got a number of guests, so I'm going to have to work a little bit at this. On my left is First Lieutenant Wesley Schultz. Next to First Lieutenant Schultz is Sergeant Stanley Duco. And next to Sergeant Duco is Corporal Joseph Duenas. And on my right, let the camera come over this side, is Gunnery Sergeant Lawrence Hayes. Next to Lawrence Hayes is Staff Sergeant Larry Alexander. To Sergeant Alexander's right is Sergeant Daniel Ferguson. Sergeant Ferguson, can you raise your hand a little bit so our camera can catch you? There he is. Okay, we're catching up. And to his right is Corporal Richard Mahern. I may have pronounced that Mathern. Mathern. Thank you, Corporal. And not last, but certainly not least, is Sergeant William Davis. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on the program. And I'm going to jump back and forth to my seating chart. First, before we set this up, I'd like to start with our First Lieutenant Schultz and have you tell us a little bit about where you're from. And I think I've prefaced a little bit about from the standpoint that you're all part of the 1st Battalion, 5th Marine Division, and you're an infantry unit. Can you tell us a little bit about what your unit does? And secondly, what your role was and where you were located in general during the crisis?
We're an infantry battalion, and then during the actual Gulf War, when Desert Storm started, we were a mechanized infantry battalion, part of Task Force Ripper, which was one of the first units across into Kuwait. But prior to that, though, we deployed to Saudi Arabia on the 15th of August as part of the early forces there to marry up with the prepositioned forces with the MPF shipping. And that worked out quite successfully. Then we basically provided a defensive role until Desert Storm actually started in the northern desert. So
you were a defensive role initially, and then on February 24th, you aren't going to forget that day. I'll remember it before the end of the program. On February 24th, you were part of the forces that crossed from the Saudi Arabian desert into actually Kuwait at that time.
Correct.
Okay, so you guys weren't back in laundry patrol. You were essentially frontline infantry forces.
Correct. We were part of the breaching forces of the 2 complex obstacle belts that the Iraqis had set up. Okay, I'm going to ask you a number of questions, but just to keep setting up, and I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I'm going to run back over to my right for the camera's purposes, and I'm going to jump right on Gunnery Sergeant Hayes. Gunnery Sergeant Hayes, your experiences in going there. Give us a feeling first of your initial attitude in being called up. You were one of the first units from Camp Pendleton, and one of the first units, I think, in particular, in the whole military forces, to arrive on the scene. Was your attitude one more of a little bit nervous about it or excited about it? Or?
Well, I think being, one of the first units in there, you had no idea what to expect when you got there. So you were doing the learning experience. You learned how things should be done. I think units following us in sort of built off what we learned when we first got there.
You weren't in a big city. You were out in the middle of the desert. So from that standpoint, there really wasn't a whole lot to do in some of the spare time, I guess.
You had to really set up and be creative in training that you did to do as much as you could with very little to keep the people busy.
Okay, I'm going to bounce around on a few of those, and what I'd like to do at this point is to go through another reintroduction and let each one of the gentlemen tell us their name again and how long they've been in the service and what their job was or is as an infantryman, and give us a little bit of a preference of who they are and possibly even where they came from. The first one that I'll put on the spot, and I'll jump back to my list, let's put Sergeant William Davis. Sergeant Davis, he's the far right. Sergeant Davis, there you go. First, tell us where you're from, how long you've been in the service, and what you did in the infantry battalion.
I'm from Winsboro, South Carolina, and I've been in the service for 7.5 years. I'm with Charlie Company 1-5, and my job title is I'm a squad leader with 1st Platoon Charlie Company. I'm married, I have 1 child, and basically that's about all there is to Sergeant Davis.
Okay, that's perfect, Sergeant Davis. We'll run through and give you more. Pass it over if you would, and we'll jump on our next one up, which is we've got Corporal Mathern.
That's correct.
I got it that way.
My name's Corporal Richard Mathern. I've been in the Marine
Can
Corps.
I get you to pull that up a little closer?
All right. Again, my name's Corporal Richard Mathern. I've been in the Marine Corps for 4 years. I'm from Billings, Montana. I'm a machine gun squad leader in Charlie Company. I was attached to Sergeant Davis's platoon during the ground offensive, and again, I'm a machine gun squad leader.
Okay, thanks. Next up, and I should be more prepared than this. Next up, Daniel Ferguson. Sergeant, tell us about you.
All right, I'm Dan Ferguson. I'm a sergeant. I'm a 81 millimeter mortar section leader. Got a wife, 3 kids. Been in a little over 6 years.
And where are you from?
I was born in Port Hueneme, California.
So at least you're somewhat of a native from that
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Next up is Sergeant Alexander. Staff Sergeant Alexander, pardon me.
I'm Staff Sergeant Alexander. I'm originally from Shreveport, Louisiana. I've been in the Marine Corps for 17 years. Mind you, up in the Marine Corps, I'm a platoon sergeant for a weapons platoon. And within weapons platoon, we have the 60 mortar, the small, and we have the M60 machine gun.
Okay, thanks. And you're married also?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and I think we're already mic'd up on Gunnery Sergeant Hayes. But Gunnery Sergeant Hayes, give us a little of your personal background.
Okay, I'm originally from Little Rock, Arkansas. I've been in the Marine Corps just over 17 years, and right now I'm the company gunnery sergeant for Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines.
Okay, and you're married also?
I'm married and have 2 children.
Okay, we'll get to that part, which had to be some of the toughest part. To go again to my left, let's talk to First Lieutenant Schultz, and tell us about yourself, family, where you came from, that kind of background.
Right. I spent most of my life being raised in the great state of Texas. I'm from Dallas. I'm married to a Texas girl, and I've got a little 2.5-year-old girl named Christina, so I'll give her a plug there.
There you go.
I'm an infantry officer by trade. I enlisted in the Marine Corps 7.5 years ago as an infantryman, and during the wonderful Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, I served as the battalion adjutant for 1st Battalion, 5th Marines.
Okay, and Sergeant Dutko.
Yes, my name is Stan Dutko. I'm from Goodson, Pennsylvania. I enlisted in the Marine Corps about 6 years ago. In July, it'll be 6 years. I served as a infantry squad leader in 3rd Platoon during the Gulf War.
Great, and you're single.
I'm single. Recently engaged, though.
One of our two single men, but almost not single.
Almost not single.
Okay, Corporal Duenas.
Yes, I'm Corporal Duenas, and I'm originally from Guam. And I'm a mortarman squad leader. And I was a 60 Mike mortar in support for the company, from Bravo Company 1-5.
Okay, great. Well, we've got the mic on you, Corporal Duenas. How many years have you been in?
I've been in for 4 years.
Okay. What was your feeling initially, being called up and having the opportunity to go over and serve? And tell us about your first days there. Were there any general attitudes that you had positively or negatively?
Well, it was kind of like a disbelief. Didn't think we were going to go there, because every time we see stuff like this on TV, we think we're going to go, and then all of a sudden, you get your hopes down. Well, I didn't want to go to war, but, it's one of them things.
When you practice, you'd like to be able to serve the country if you got the opportunity.
In some cases, yes.
Okay. Sergeant Dutko, we'll run back over to you. And I'll bounce around a little on this question in particular, because it's a situation I think that we're all faced with, and you're all faced with, and it's having at least family and/or in your particular case, a fiance that was left. When you left initially, was there a little bit of not fear in your heart, but question in your heart of what was going to happen?
There's a big question in your heart. Unsure of where we were going, when we were leaving. We weren't even really sure when we left the Camp Pendleton area. We went to the 29 Palms at first. And we weren't even really sure if we were going to be deployed to Saudi Arabia. So there's a big question there. Lack of communication with your parents, with your loved ones back home. At first, the first month probably was the worst time about it, because we didn't have any opportunity to make phone calls, to write letters. The mail was slow at first. But after a while, the mail picked up. It was a little bit easier for us to communicate back and forth, so it wasn't all that bad.
So it got a little bit better after a while. That was a question that I was going to run to, and I'll work on Lieutenant Schultz with this question. When we first had the Gulf War incident, when it first got teamed up on our particular program, we were able to get a line into Lieutenant Colonel Shotwell, who we know well locally in the area, and he was able to talk to us about what was going on communication-wise. That first month, there wasn't a lot of communication. How did you fare from a family standpoint?
It makes it kind of difficult, especially being married. I've been married almost 5 years now, so I guess me and the wife are thinking on the same wavelength most of the time. So it worked out. It's difficult being away from the wife and being away from your children. As far as communicating, the only thing I can really say is that you try when you can, and if situation doesn't allow it, you can. We were able to write letters. As we talked about earlier, it's being the first there. We learned, and other people learned from us, and one of the bad things about being the first is that you set up all the systems and the support. So it took a little while before we got mail through and before the system was set up so we could get calls back. But again, that was just the disadvantage of being the first. But it worked out fairly well. Eventually we were able to get through and communicate and be able to work with the family and everything, and it's good to be back. So
I'm going to jump more on the family, but before I do, I wanted to give everybody an opportunity about communication. Is anybody here willing to say who had the highest phone bill during that time period? There you go. Sergeant Ferguson, how well did you do from the standpoint of the phone bill?
Well, I'm currently about $1,400 to AT&T,
Ooh.
but not all of it was mine. My sister stayed with my wife while I was over there, and her boyfriend's in the Army, and he was down in Bahrain, so combination.
There was a lot of long-distance phone calls to the Middle East.
Yeah, I found out about quite a few.
Some of the advantages of coming back is the fact that, at least for the single people in particular, is they had a little bit of money possibly saved up, not a lot to spend it on. The families, I think most of your stuff was all sent back on allotment. Was that correct, Sergeant Hayes?
Yes.
So if you came back to those big bills, you were a little bit stuck with them. Well, I'm on you, Sergeant Hayes. Let's talk a little for a second about the family. Your family in particular, you've got two young ones. Anybody else have young children? Oh, 4 or 5 of you. So we'll talk about. We'll go down the line on children. What did you miss?
Well, the thing I miss most about my children, I have a little girl who I left was almost 3 years old. And you miss that part of her growing up that you'll never see again. And you come home and she's a bigger girl. She does things that you're not always a part of. But it's really special coming back.
I've got a 3 and a 5-year-old, and I can't. It seems like sometimes I just come home from a day and they're 2 or 3 inches taller.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump back to Sergeant Ferguson. You've got children too. How many do you have?
I have 3 daughters.
And what was your experience? What are their ages first?
Okay, my eldest is 6. Then number 2 is 3 years old, and the youngest is about 20 months right now.
20 months. So she was maybe.
She just turned a year while we were in Panama in July, and I came home on August the 6th, and August the 7th we deployed to 29 Palms. So I missed my eldest 6-year birthday on August 9th. Then I missed the middle one back in December, too.
So you missed 2 out of 3.
I missed 3 out of 3 this past year, but yeah.
Okay, well we're close to you. Let's jump over to Staff Sergeant Alexander. You've got children also?
Yes, I do.
And how many? What are your ages?
I have 2. I have a girl that is now 11 and a boy that's 9.
Did you miss anything while they were gone?
They grew a lot, but the things that you don't know you're missing is after you get back and everything that they need or they want, they go to mommy because they are so used to doing that since you've been gone, and that's you can tell that they're just not used to talking to you.
So you get a little bit of a generation gap that you've got to try to pull back together.
Right.
How was Christmas? Tell us about Christmas, and I want to jump in with all. Maybe get you hold that mic a little tighter. I think we'll be able to pick it up a little.
How was Christmas?
Thanksgiving and Christmas, both were difficult.
I don't know. Thanksgiving, I was okay. I didn't really think about it. Christmas, I kind of thought about it more than probably I should have. I guess there was a spot of depression there. So I wouldn't want to do it again.
Okay. Corporal Mattern, can we pass that down to you? And I hope I pronounced that right. You're the only one I keep slaughtering. You're single.
That's correct.
What was your situation different maybe from some of the married people, and how was being away from the family?
As you know, I sympathize a lot with the married people. You know, I'm not married, and being single, it bonded us a lot of single guys together, a lot more together. So that made up our family over there. My best friend, who just recently got engaged, you know, we were pretty tight while we were over there. And Christmas, it was a real lonely time. And then again, your single friends, you know, help get that going. So I think that day we spent around a fake Christmas tree in the sand and sung Christmas carols, but it was a pretty lonely time.
Okay,
as far as that
before we jump onto our first caller, let me ask one question of Sergeant Davis, if we can. Media versus reality. You may not have known what we were experiencing, but was what we actually got on our picture was that it was a little bit lonely. They kept you fairly busy during the day. Did the media, you think, perceive what was really going on there pretty well, or at least what you got to see of it?
Well, it was definitely lonely, but I can't see the media getting the full effect that we had. You had times where, as the holidays came along, and you're thinking about your family, and you're looking at how you're living, and you're not knowing what's going to be the end result of this thing. And I don't think they could get the full effect, but it was definitely lonely and some hard times over there.
Okay, we're going to get more into that because the next time I get a chance, I'm going to ask you what the daily life was. But let's take a caller first. Welcome to the Voice of Oceanside. Can you please state your name and your question for our guests?
Yeah, my name is Jay.
Yeah, Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, and I want to know if any of their younger brothers or sisters with any influence or make them stronger while they're out there in Saudi Arabia.
Okay. So your question again was the influence getting stronger? And repeat that for us again, would you?
Was any of their younger brothers or sisters any influence to them while they were out there in Saudi Arabia?
Okay, hold on there, Jay. Unless anybody in particular want to take that question? Or, go ahead. Jump right in there, Stan.
I had a kind of distant relationship with my sister Karen. We were real close when I was growing up in school. And then after I joined the service, we kind of like drifted apart. But being separated over there, when I went over to the Gulf, we sort of formed a bond again. And now me and her are like really close again. And it's a good experience that happened for us because I'll never let it happen again. You know, it was really great that happened.
Okay. Jay, does that answer your question for you?
Yes.
Yeah, do you have anything else you'd like to ask?
No, I just like to know if Corporal Duenas had anything else to add to that.
Corporal Duenas, anything for you? Grab that mic. Jay may know who you are.
Jay, I'm going to get you. Jay's my little brother.
Thank you, Jay.
All right.
Corporal Duenas, will you have the mic? We'll stay on you. Tell us about your daily life. What you experienced on a daily basis.
On a daily basis, all we did really was they had schedules for us for training, and you'd PT to keep physically fit, and then they give you time to write, and then they give you time to eat. You know, basically, the individual Marine had to be imaginative and creative to what he did with his time. Usually it was brushing up on their MOS, their military occupation, or whatnot. And that's what basically kept us going through. It was hard, but a lot of the individual Marines made it through friendship and through support, through the people out here with their family and everything.
Okay. Sergeant Dudko, you're close. I'll have you grab the mic next. You've already answered a couple of questions, but we'll keep hammering them at you. We've talked a little bit about what you did on a daily basis. Was it difficult from a day-to-day basis, not knowing how long you were going to be there or what was going to happen next?
Kind of was difficult with the repetitiveness of the training, but it was beneficial to us that we did repeat the training over and over again. The not knowing when we were going to go in was probably the hardest thing, and to keep the troops motivated into doing the training was kind of difficult that way. We knew eventually we would go across. It was just a matter of time before the decision was made when we were going to go. And that's basically it. Okay,
we're going to talk about that day you went across. But first, Lieutenant Schultz, let me ask you a question if we could. You don't need the microphone. You're already all mic'd up. There's a lot of experiences that go through working with a number of people. How many people were working with you on a daily basis under your command?
I was the battalion adjutant, so one of my functions was to take care of the entire battalion. But in my immediate shop, I've got roughly about 55 Marines.
Was it difficult to keep everybody somewhat active, and that idle hand situation's got to be tough?
Again, part of my job as the adjutant is I'm the senior administrator for the battalion. And again, because it's being so far away, little things like just getting the mail for the battalion took on a monumental proportion when your 8-hour Humvee drive, which is the new version of the Jeep, away from where the mails can be picked up and the like, getting Marines paid out in the middle of the desert, again, because there are not a lot of facilities, and spreading my staff all over the place.
Not a lot for them to spend it on either.
No, not a lot for them to spend it on, but again, just making sure they're getting the money back home, taking care of their dependents, and because the separation causes a lot of difficulties, and again, that's part of the nature of being a Marine. All the Marines here have been on at least one deployment in addition of 6 months in length or longer, in addition to going to the Gulf. And it makes it difficult for families and taking care of people long distance. And, so
the old
that keeps
World
us
War
busy.
II philosophy of the Marines wanted you to have a wife that would have issued you one has changed from this perspective. Gunnery Sergeant Hayes, you're a veteran of 17 years. I've got to make an editorial comment initially, and I was a kid that grew up in this neighborhood. Always have had a relationship with the military because of that, and it was a tough time during Vietnam here. And this is a personal observation. It seemed like the Desert Storm operation was almost a healing process for not only this community, but a lot of the people, and maybe the military too, where there's some pride that came back into being involved in the service. What's your experience?
Well, I think one of the things that really helped everybody get through that was the support they got from the American people. I mean, we would just be swamped with letters. In fact, so many that you couldn't answer all of them. I mean, you would get letters from school kids and everything else that just provide you so much support. There's a lot of incidences where once they got back, a lot of the Marines have gone to some of these people who wrote them, who they corresponded with the whole time they were over there to see them. Eat dinner with them, get to know them. And you had some good friendships grow out of that already.
I want to ask everybody that question and what their feeling was of the mail and the attitude that came back. But before we do, I want to jump into our next caller. Welcome to the Voice of Oceanside. Can you please state your name and your question for our guests?
Yes, my name is Tom, and my question is for Lieutenant Schultz.
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
What pressures were you faced as a leader and officer out there?
Okay, Tom, hold on. The pressures you were faced, Lieutenant.
I was really fortunate. We had the Marines we had out there were outstanding young men, because again, most of them were young men. They lived in very harsh conditions. We jokingly said we went camping for 7 months, but still they maintained their sense of humor and the sense of challenge about it. It's even though we kind of joked among ourselves about the cavalier attitude of there will be morale. The point was we, for the most part, were able to have fun wherever we were, able to keep our sense of humor and enjoy ourselves. As far as the challenge, actually, in some ways, it made it easier. It was very easy to focus on training because the threat was very, very real to all the Marines. There was no alcohol, there was no distractions, so training was actually probably easier than anything else. So leadership-wise, actually, I think it wasn't that as tough for a leader. Again, the threat of combat and the actual threat of the environment over there and the hostile environment itself posed a challenge in making sure you're keeping your Marines calm and working with what they were thinking and experiencing, because anyone over there is going to feel fear, because that's a human natural emotion. The point is mastering that fear and using the strength that you gain from it to support you. So like I said, the desert was not a leadership challenge. It was a good learning place. Fortunately, we had 6 months to practice.
And a lot of bonding with the people that were there.
A lot of bonding, and like a lot of cases, it made the leadership easier. It gave you a chance to focus. There wasn't any distractions, and gave you a chance to get very, very close to your fellow Marines.
Okay, Tom, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I'd like to congratulate him for a job well done.
Thank you, Tom. Well, thank you for them.
Thank you.
Let's jump over to Sergeant Davis. He's out on the corner in the far end, so he doesn't take near the beating that the rest of them do that are closer to the front. Your experience is from the attitude of the public that we asked that question a minute ago, and the type of mail, the type of general feeling that you had from Homeside.
Well, the things we got back from the public, and it was outstanding. The way the American public supported you over there, and all the mail that came in, all the pen pals. They kept you motivated. A lot of times you could get down, and mail was kind of messed up sometime. And some days you get one letter, no letters for maybe a week. But then you get the next time you get mail, you may get 12 letters from pen pals, your family, and all that. And I come from a pretty big family. It's 10 of us, but we were kind of pretty distant too since I joined the military. And being over in the desert, it definitely brought my family back together, and the support was outstanding.
And you're also married?
Yes.
No children, or?
I have a little girl. She's 5.
Okay, so you experienced missing some things too with her.
Oh, definitely. I came from Panama. I married up with 1-5. They were already there, and I came over about a month after they were there. And we were just coming from the transition, come from Panama, and all the leave time. And I sent my child home a month early from Panama, and she didn't see us. And then we go through the drive of traveling all the way across to California. Never been in California before, and I go straight out to Saudi Arabia, and I'm leaving my wife in California. And there she is, she and my kid, and they got to learn the ropes of how to learn the life in California. I just put them in a home, and then I left. And she did an amazing job. And just seeing my kid's a real daddy's girl, and we're real close. And when I got back, just to see how much she's grown and how smart she's gotten using those big words, stuff you never heard her say before. And it's just a great feeling to get back with them.
That's fantastic. I've got a daddy's girl, too. I can't imagine being away from her that long. And I'll ask this if anybody would like to handle it. The spousal situation, the wives and or girlfriends and family, that had to be one of the most difficult stories that Sergeant Davis has had from the standpoint of just being located here. Does anybody have any story in particular they'd like to share with us that was difficult for them? And maybe we can focus in a little on what the attitude that your particular spouse had. And we haven't touched that on how difficult it was for you, but was there any? I'm sure that they let you know about their frustrations. We'll jump in with someone that has got 3 of them in particular. Let's go to Sergeant Daniel Ferguson.
Well, it was kind of hard. You'd get a letter from home. She'd be telling you about the problems of that day, but unfortunately, you'd get the letter 20 days later sometimes. So you're sitting there thinking about the stress back home, what she's doing. And you look at the situation you're at, and you're trying to balance the two out, and you write her back, well, do this. If that happens, do this. By the time she gets the letter back, it's 2 months down the road in some instances. Because, myself, I couldn't write back every day. And there's times when you were out there, you were just like, I don't want to write. But it helped out. Like Sergeant Davis said, the mail coming in from people we didn't know was outstanding. I had a 4-H club, 4 elementary school classes adopt me. And there was times when you were really down, and getting a letter from them really helped you. And the wife's attitude was, I want you home. Forget the sandbox. It's time to come home. We need you back here too. So when it hits, you better keep your head down and get your butt back home.
Corporal Matter, you were shaking your head there. You've evidently experienced some of the feelings of communication through the mail and getting things in the mail. What was your most memorable moment from that standpoint?
One day, myself and a friend of mine, Corporal Pettit, who's my roommate at this time, we were walking through an area. When we first got there, we got to stay in a place. It was called Camp 15. It was just a brief break from the desert. Come back, wash your clothes as best you could, and move back onto the desert. One day we went to a place, this building, and there was just tons and tons of letters from people that had written us. So we proceeded. We took every letter that was off the board, and we went while we washed our clothes. We wrote back about, I don't know, between the two of us, maybe 40, 45 people, and everybody that we wrote back. And I apologize to the community of Oceanside if we didn't return the letters again, because there was just so many that you were overwhelmed by all the mail that was there. So it was phenomenal.
So there were some good experiences from that standpoint.
Yes, quite a bit.
Staff Sergeant Alexander, we'll jump over to you. You shook your head during that same comment, and I think that the comment had to do with some of the spousal things. Now you've had some experience that way. Share that with us.
Well,
For me, it wasn't that bad. I think my wife took it very well, and I think it. First of all, because this is probably the fourth time I've been separated from my family since I've been in the Marine Corps. So she took it very well from that standpoint. There were problems that she ran across, like I can't drive the stick shift, or how am I going to get your car registered, and things like that. But on the one thing I tried to do is if she had a problem, if she was feeling down, I always tried to keep her motivated, and that's what she was trying to do for me. So it wasn't that bad for me. The other meal was really great from like they say, from all the people around the country, and since we've been back, I've heard a number of times that people say, well, they're doing this for you because maybe they feel guilty because of the people away in Vietnam. And well, I say to that, that's okay with me. That's okay with me because we spent 4 days fighting the war, and the people that was in Vietnam was over there 10, 11, 12 years, not at one time, but I think they owe them that, and it's okay. It's okay with me.
It's a healing process. You know, you're making a super point there, and I think Gunnery Sergeant Hayes, you served in Vietnam.
No,
You came in right after.
Right after.
17 years. Did you feel some of those same things with the people that came back, or the people here that were giving you that kind of a credit and accolades, that they were somewhat healing from the experience before?
I think it was. I think that I think that for a change, the Americans saw something that that they knew was right. There wasn't that doubt there was in Vietnam. Like, there was no, why are we here? Why are we doing this? I think as a whole, the American public knew why we were there. They thought it was right, and they wanted to show their support for the troops, and I think they did a real good job of it.
A question that just came up, and I'll run back over to Sergeant Duenas now. Well, he's on the far end, so he'll take a little bit of a beating for now. We talked about the war. Now, that was 2/24, that the war started, and really you were involved in it for 4 days, I believe, from the standpoint of most of your action. Is that correct, from the standpoint of when you went across? Tell us about that, and tell us about your mental outlook when the call came down that it was time to hit the beach, so to speak.
When they told us that the day that we were going to go in, I mean, we were ready to go. We were itching to do this, to get the job done and come home. That was on my mind. Most of the guys in my section's mind. That was on our mind, just to do this job and get it over with and come home safely. And it was a lot of the war was a lot of mental torment because we sat behind it in Amtraks, and a lot of the times we were buttoned up. And we didn't know what was going on around us on the outside. And we were just waiting to say, hey, we need a fire mission or whatnot. And basically that didn't really happen. It was pretty much a ride, a big training ride for me. And I'm just glad that there was really no shots fired over our way. Our battalion went in full force, and we came back with everybody that we went in with. And I think that's pretty good for a battalion and a war.
Sergeant Deco, we've got you next time. Let's jump into this question, which is kind of interesting. The Scuds were going overhead at night, or had to be at least somewhere flying into Saudi Arabia, and planes were flying over, I'm sure, in the general vicinity. What was your feeling of that? Was there any trepidation, so to speak, with thinking that maybe a Scud could land near you?
I don't think we were too overly concerned with the Scud missiles. We weren't a real big threat for the Scud missiles. We kept moving around within the desert. Every so often we'd move, and heck, half the time I didn't know where I was at, and so I don't think the enemy could find us too easily. But the Scud wasn't a big problem. Once the air war started, though, it was kind of, tension was a little bit eased. I don't know, it's hard to believe, but it made people feel a little bit more easy that maybe we're going to do this now, and we're kind of working towards the day we're going to go in there. The training that we've been doing, the rehearsals we've been doing over and over again, we're probably going to get a chance to do it. And the hardest part was probably the time, the 12 hours or so that we went before we went across the border. Kind of morbid, saying goodbye to some of your friends. You might not see them later on. We rode, like Corporal Duenas was saying, in Amtrak vehicles, and separated by squads. and we had become pretty close within the platoons and within the companies. And we'd walk around after we were getting dressed up in our MOP gear before we went across the border, and kind of visit the other Marines that we had gotten close to over there. Kind of like just to see them just in case something would happen one more time. And that was probably the hardest thing for me to do, just walk around and see those people like that.
And know that there's a potential that they weren't coming back, and maybe you weren't either.
There was a potential, that was the hard part, but thank God everything worked out great for us, and everybody made it back in one piece. And we have, thank God for that.
Okay. Lieutenant Schultz, let's ask you this question so we can help set this up, and I may not have done this well enough early in the program. I'll ask one of the cameramen to try to focus in on our map a little, and it's a real busy map. And I'll try to point, you can maybe help me out here. The general vicinity that we have got, if we can pick it up here, of Iran is in this area here, with this being the Persian Gulf. Kuwait is this little portion down here. And my understanding in talking to you that you were pretty much on this border right down in here, right below Kuwait?
A little bit to your right there at the elbow. We came in the vicinity of the Al Wafra oil fields and crossed through into Kuwait and breached the two deliberate complex obstacle belts that he had set up with a variety of minefields, berms, wire obstacles, and the like. We had planned for worst case in all our operations, and we were very happy that the worst case did not come to pass. And even though we had planned and trained extensively for the reality of casualties, we were very happy that we had very minimal casualties. He had a substantial amount of forces over there. He did outnumber us on the ground, and we're just fortunate that due to 40-plus days of aerial bombardment, the immense amounts of artillery that we brought against him, and the continued fire support that we used to cross the border, that he had lost the will to fight. And matter of fact, to the point where we were amazed with the number of prisoners of war that we took. It was far beyond.
Speaking of that, did your battalion in particular have any opportunity to take any of the prisoners?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Several thousand.
We're getting some of those reactions, and I'll jump into somebody that I beat up on a regular basis, Sergeant Ferguson. You're easy because I can see the reaction on your face. You're an easy mark. Did you run across any of these personally, and what was the general attitude and condition of these people?
Yes, we did run across them. Matter of fact, day one, the 24th of February, I would say I saw at least 1,000 of them that day myself. I was a lot luckier than some of the other Marines. I was sitting up in the hatch, controlling the Amtrak, so to speak. Being a section leader, I got to sit up there so I could see. I saw a lot of prisoners. Matter of fact, my section of mortar people, we searched 33 of them, to include an Iraqi major, some captains and lieutenants, and a few of their senior enlisted. And at first, honestly, I do believe that going across, we were ready just to shoot them, get it over with. But when we saw the state that they were in, I'm going to say it's almost like pity is the way that we kind of felt. They were carrying each other. They weren't even wounded. They were dehydrated from lack of water. They were undernourished from lack of food. I searched some Iraqis myself, and in the pockets on his leg, I found on each leg on one guy a lump the size of my fist of bread. And this bread was so hard that I couldn't even flick it with my thumbnail and get any of it off. And one guy had a canteen. We emptied it out to see what was in it. It was brown water. They started crying when we gave them good, clear water and cigarettes. They started trying to kiss us when they realized that, hey, these guys aren't going to kill us after all. And it really changed a lot to us because, like I said, we were ready to go in. We were ready to kill them. It was kind of touchy because only one or two of them really understood English halfway decent. And if they made the wrong move, we put a weapon at them real quick, and they were pretty scared. And I don't know who was scared at first, them or us, because there they are. We're on the ground. We're not in our armored vehicle. We're foot to foot, and they're within 5 feet of me. What am I going to do right? And we just relaxed and did what we've been practicing, and it helped out a lot.
Was your perception that they were worn down from the air bombardment, or that maybe they weren't prepared to do what Hussein said they were going to do? This is a personal observation I'm asking.
Well, I would say that the embargo really helped because we were getting reports that they were getting like one meal a day, like one of those little clumps of bread and like half a cup of water. That was the rumors just going around that intelligence has supposedly been getting. I would say the embargo really helped. It helped a great deal to wear down the will of fighting. The air war, they cringed because while we were searching them, we had Cobras, which is our attack helicopters that the Marine Corps uses. We had them circling over us. The pilots were watching us real careful. They were ready to help out if necessary, and those guys really didn't, when the air came around, they were like going into the sand. They were trying to bury themselves a little bit. And there was reports that when they attacked, I can't think of the city they attacked right before the war. Kapchi, yeah, that's it. That when after they had surrendered, that when our air would fly over, a bunch of them would fall down in the fetal position, curling up, screaming in terror. And we saw them cringing, even as they were walking, carrying their big white flags. They were walking by us, heading south. We would see them, start ducking and trying to hide a little bit as the air went by.
So the air war and the embargo both worked. Anybody else have any comments they'd like to address on the prisoners of war? And if there's a subject here that I'm missing, or if you want to talk about something I haven't asked you about, just yell at me. We'd love to hear it. Go ahead, Sergeant Davis.
I just want to say a few things on what he said about the prisoners' attitudes as far as when we showed up. I was one of the first few tracks that came through, and I was up in a TC hatch like he was, so I could see a lot of things that was going on. And as we were coming through the minefields, we had breached areas that our vehicles were going to go through. The POWs they were like happy to see us, and they were coming through areas of their minefield that wasn't even cleared, trying to get to us to turn themselves in. And as my track rolled by, there was like 5 of them sitting on the side. They were waving, and it was like, where you guys been? And we would get intel reports. I know, and when I would hear them tell us this would come from our intel. They'd say, those guys are living real bad up there, and they're not eating well, and they don't even have shoes, and the uniforms all ragged out. And they were telling us this about the frontline troops. I found that hard to believe. And as we were rolling through, I saw three Iraqi soldiers run by with no shoes on, and I couldn't believe it. And it was real cold out there for us. We were freezing. Toward the end, it was getting real cold, and I couldn't understand how they were going day to day, living without shoes or the proper gear to keep them warm like we had. So the embargoes and all that, it definitely was to our advantage, and they couldn't even get equipment to their frontline troops to get them the things they needed.
Were they pretty much dug in holes, Sergeant Davis, or did they have emplacements? And I wanted to ask this question too, because back on USA Today, for example, and in the local newspapers even, we would see these setups of what the typical Iraqi defense was, and it would be somewhat of a berm for our tanks to go over, and then sometimes an open minefield, and then a dugout trench with burning oil, and then their tanks dug in. That had to be fearful in your own mind if that was what was set up. Secondly, if it was set up, were they underground? How were they buried in?
Well, I'll go back to the things we received on our intel. We would get intel reports on how they were set up, and they would show us these designs of how the Iraqi defense would be. They were somewhat that way, but basically when we got there, they were blown over holes, and when we set in a defense, we're continually bettering our defense all the time to prepare for the enemy. To me, from them being there, their attitude was just sit in the hole and take cover for the air, because the air was hitting them all the time. And they were never improving their defense. The trench lines that they had were blown over, and basically they just had holes that they were hiding in.
Okay. Well, we've got one more caller, and we'll take that caller. We'll take a few more callers if they come in, and we'll try to give you a few more difficult subjects, too. Welcome to the Voice of Oceanside. Can you please state your name and your question for our guests?
My name's Vicki Harris.
Yes, Vicki, go ahead.
And I'd like to know if these guys were getting the information about what was going on in Oceanside as far as the support while they were there.
Okay. Well, I'll let a couple of them answer that, because I saw 2 moving heads again. Lieutenant May moved his head, and as always, Sergeant Ferguson moved his head. So he's an open game. Lieutenant Schultz, did you get information about Oceanside in particular, or Camp Pendleton in particular?
Camp Pendleton, we got copies of some of the newspapers, everything from the Stars and Stripes there was a local Arab news that we received copies of. Occasionally we get copies of the local Scout, which is the magazine, or I guess you could, the newspaper that comes out weekly in Camp Pendleton. And a lot of the information came from just the letters from the wives and loved ones and the friends in the community. That was basically, obviously we didn't have cable TV there. Sorry about that. But and we didn't have any satellite hookups for TV or the like. You could get BBC and Armed Forces radio on the radio, so that kept you up to date a little bit. But I was still shocked when I got back how much I missed and
what a change
from Oceanside. And we did hear that it was like a ghost town after everybody left.
It was for a while. Sergeant Ferguson, we'll have you handle that for Vicki also.
Okay. My wife's grandmother lives up in Irvine, so she kept sending me copies of the paper of the local area. She'd write to me about what was going on. My wife would, and a couple other people would write and say this and that. And we heard about the rallies down in San Diego, the good ones, the bad ones. We were able to pick up a few of the radio stations that the Armed Forces set up for us, and they'd tell us things like when all the protesters were on the bridge up in the Bay Area, and we found out all about that through local papers and stuff like that, and just mostly, like Lieutenant Schultz said, mail from home.
Okay, Vicki, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, and welcome home.
Thank you very much. We've got a couple more callers, so we'll take a few of those now, and then I want to get back and ask you, before we sign off, what your most memorable moment was, or something you remember most from being in this and you'll remember throughout your life. So think about that one for a second. Welcome to the Voice of Oceanside. Can you please state your name and your question for our guests?
Is it my turn?
Yes, go ahead. What's your name, ma'am?
Thelma Mitchell.
Okay, Thelma, go ahead with your question.
The Marine that showed so much compassion, which all of them did, of course, but he was on TV so much, and they had the Iraqi soldier kneeling and was so frightened. Does anyone know who he was? I've often wondered.
Okay, hold on, Thelma. I don't know if they will. We get a little chuckle because there was 500,000 of them out there. How many Marines? Lieutenant, we'll give you that.
100,000.
About 100,000. And did you guys see the clip of that particular news clip?
No.
They didn't get a chance to see that, Thelma. And what the clip was, and I'll explain it a little bit, was one of our men walking up, and I believe it was a Marine, that was taking a prisoner in, and the prisoner was on his hands and knees and all but kissing, I think, the Marine's feet, asking for his life. Is that pretty much the one you're thinking of, Thelma?
Yes, that's the one, and that's my only question. If anyone ever finds out the name of that gentleman, I wish they would put it on. I'm telling you all.
Okay, you remember the World War II picture with the sailor kissing the nurse, so that's going to be one of those memories.
I'm 73, so I remember a lot of things.
Okay, Thelma, any other questions?
Pardon?
Any other questions for our guests?
No, that's just been on my mind. This is my opportunity to see if anyone knew.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll try one more caller. Welcome to the Voice of Oceanside. Can you please state your name and your question for our guests?
Yes, my name is Leroy Coates.
Yes, Leroy, go ahead.
And I have a question. What do they think would have been the outcome of the war if the Iraqi soldiers would have stayed in fault instead of surrendered?
Well, who wants that one? Everybody wants it. Let's give Sergeant Anderson that shot, and we'll rotate through a few people.
What would have been the outcome? I think the outcome would have been the same. We would have won. I think we were better trained, and we had better leadership. And I think with those two things, there's no force anywhere that could have beat us.
Okay, Sergeant Hayes, did you want that one also?
Well, just as an example, I just think the difference in the people. If you're forced to be there and fight to defend something you really don't want to, you're not going to fight that hard. And plus, I think, especially later as time went on, Iraq was really inflating what they could do. Because all of a sudden, one day we saw in the paper where Iraq had just activated 200,000 more elite Republican Guard. Well, where were they hiding these 200,000 elite people to begin with? So I think that a lot of it was inflated by what the Iraqi army could do. And I agree with the staff sergeant that the outcome would have been the same. We would have had a real tough time, I think, but the outcome would have been the same.
But they had not changed their defenses, and I think it was Sergeant Davis that had mentioned this. They hadn't changed their defenses, and our air had pretty much blown away some of their defense mechanisms. So you would have been able to walk right up to them, essentially.
Yeah.
Leroy, does that answer your question for you?
Yes, and one more question.
Go ahead.
What was the biggest problem they thought they had?
The biggest problem?
As far as in communications or things like that?
Okay, Sergeant Hayes.
Well, during the actual, especially the first couple of days of the ground war, it was just the visibility from the oil fires. It became hard to even during the daytime. It was like dusk, and at night you could see absolutely nothing. And I think just the visibility and being able to picture things and not let your imagination run away with you.
Even with night vision, you couldn't see through the smoke.
It enhances the light, but the smoke got where it just blocked the light out, and there was not much there to enhance.
It was something
it's real
medieval.
hard to see. Yeah.
It was a strange, so that put actually another fear factor in, so to speak. And I got a bunch of shaking heads on that one. Leroy, does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you very much. The fear factor, and what popped into my head after reading some articles, and I'll jump on her. I haven't beat up on Sergeant Duco for a second. Dutko, I should say. The mines, and you're talking about going through these situations which mines may or may not be cleared, and I remember reading about the toe popper, and a fellow in the newspaper just recently who lost a foot through this type of situation. Was that in the back of your mind?
Yeah, it was kind of. We had a lot of classes, though, on the Italian mines that they had, and they emplaced a lot of our own mines that the United States had sold them before the war had started, when we were still on good terms with Iraq. And we had a lot of training with them, and we were pretty confident with the way the breach was going to happen, the way the lanes were going to be cleared for us when the infantry foot soldiers, we had to go through ourselves. I was really confident with the way we were going to do it, and I wasn't overly concerned with the mines themselves.
Did you have any fear in the back of your mind, or any at least trepidation in the back of your mind that the Republican Guard was out there somewhere and was going to get worse?
No, I wasn't really overly concerned about the Republican Guard. Our mission was the two breaches that we had to do, and that was what we were really concerned about. If they would have fought us a little bit harder and they wouldn't have surrendered, it would have made our time real tough right there. And we didn't need to be thinking about the Republican Guard or anything else. We just think one thing at a time. And since it was kind of easy for us when a lot of them did surrender, it made our job easier. But we just focused on one thing, and we trained for that the whole time we were there.
They talked back in the United States about the getting ready to run a race, and say you're at the 100-yard dash, and you're all set in position, and you can only stay in that position so long, and it starts to make the racer tense. And that had to be a situation that all of you shared a little bit of, being right on that cutting edge for so long. Let me jump over to Sergeant Duenas, or Corporal Duenas, pardon me. Corporal, let me ask you your most memorable moment, and we'll run through everybody and ask them that. What are you going to come across or come out of this situation in your life with 20 or 30 years from now that you'll remember as being there and having remembered?
Just growing up. A lot of us over there, it doesn't matter what age you were, it just changed you and it made you grow up a lot quicker. Made you realize that a lot of the advantage you got here, and you're seeing those people and what they have to go through, it makes you appreciate the things that you got here, every little thing, that much better. You don't want to lose it.
You really can make a difference in the lifestyle of those people and some of the unfortunate things that the regular individual has to live through.
Yes, there's a lot of things that you see over there. You see how these people live, and there's the way how sanitary these people are. It's just something that you never picture in your mind. I mean, I've been to Okinawa and Korea, and those guys are pretty unsanitary over there as far as their living style. And over here, we take advantage of having a shower, every 3 times a day if we want. Over there, these guys...
They can't jump in the car and go see a movie and go out to dinner or anything.
They don't have running water or whatnot, so it's just one of them things that you just appreciate everything, every little thing in life.
Okay, Sergeant Dutko, you want to jump on that one?
Just like Corporal Duenas was touching on, you take the things for granted back here a lot, and over there we didn't have, and I really can't explain it any better than what he did, really.
Okay, the same situation. That's the memory you'll leave with.
Yeah, that's the memory I'll leave with.
Okay,
coming home.
Before we run through everybody else, we've got a couple more calls, and I'm going to do my best. One more call. I'm going to do my best to get all the calls in and give everybody an opportunity to talk to them. Welcome to the Voice of Oceanside. Can you please state your name and your question for our guest? We lost that one. So if we can bring it back on, we'll bring it back on in a second. Lieutenant Schultz, your memory.
My most memorable experience, and the thing I think that will always live in my mind, is after we breached the second obstacle belt on the first day, we attacked an airfield to the northwest of it. And as we were going into the attack, the just incredibly dense black smoke that covered the sky, the 100-foot plumes of flame surrounding us, and everywhere we looked, there were literally thousands of prisoners surrendering as fast as they could, and realizing that prior to that, their own propaganda machine had been circulating, rumors and, advice to their own people that, the Marines were going to mutilate and torture them if they captured them, dismember them, take their arms and legs off, and which of course is not the case. But the point being is that their absolute, fear of the air, and then just the terror that they were feeling because what their own people were telling them. And they still were surrendering in droves, and then there's that backdrop of just the dense black sky, even though it was daytime. And
it was something right out of Hollywood.
It was something medieval. It was really that's what will live in my mind, I think.
Okay, we're going to try that call again. Welcome to the Voice of Oceanside. Can you please state your name and your question for our guests?
Yes, my name is David, and I have two questions. My first question is, what unit are the Marines in, and how do they feel the Army compares to the Marine Corps in force and readiness?
Now, that's not even a fair question, because they're going to be a little bit favorable there. Who wants that question? Sergeant Alexander, I'll let you have the field day.
Okay. What I would say is first of all, the Marine Corps proved that as a force and readiness, we could get there and get the job done. We were down on the ground and we were ready to go because of the system we have, and the lieutenant talked about it earlier. The
preposition ship.
Yeah, the prepositioning ships, and we had our gear there, and we were ready to go. But as far as who's better, of course, we're going to say we were better. But in Saudi Arabia, it wasn't that, because everybody had a job to do, and I hope that had they stayed and fought, the Army would have been just as good as we were.
That's a diplomatic answer, and I think everybody worked as a team there, too. Caller, your last question. We're going to wrap up here.
What unit are the Marines in?
What unit? So we'll let you handle that, Lieutenant. We did that, but go ahead.
1st Battalion, 5th Marines. 1st Battalion, 5th Marines.
Okay, that answer your question, sir?
Yes, but I like to say, welcome home, guys, and a job well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They appreciate it, and I think everybody out there appreciates it. I don't have a lot of time. We're going to wrap up here in just a second. I want to thank everybody for coming on. Let me do a quick reintroduction if we can. Corporal Duenas is on our end there, if we can pick him up. Sergeant Dutko, Lieutenant Schultz, and then on my right, as we pick up the right, and just as I'm getting the names ready, we're going to run out of time. Gunnery Sergeant Hayes, Staff Sergeant Alexander, is a Staff Sergeant, I believe, too, Ferguson. Just Sergeant Ferguson. I was close. Not looking at my notes. Corporal Mather.
Correct.
I got it right. And Sergeant Davis. I'd like to thank them all for coming on the program and welcome them back. I think I can speak for the entire community, if not the nation, in saying that we're very proud of them. As we wrap up, we'll let you know that there's a short news brief coming out after the program, done by Angelina Soto and Chris Brew, and it was filmed actually last week, and it's called Marines Return Home. And again, we thank you for tuning into the Voice of Oceanside. And we'd like you to all share your excitement and experiences with the Marines as they come back. Thank you for watching.